Hello, beautiful people. I am here today to talk you through everything I've learned while studying the psychology of sustainability. Just like a puzzle, all these pieces seem scattered and unrelated at first, but given time and effort, you will piece together every part and eventually reveal the whole picture. Let's begin with the most fundamental part, understanding how interdependent humans and nature are. Even though we humans act superior to our surroundings, it is an inevitable fact that we are part of nature. Just like insects, animals, and flowers, we live, consume, waste, and die. Except egotistical and anthropocentric as we are, humans try to break the rules of nature. We live far longer than we should, pushing our natural expiration date further and further in reach of immortality. We consume in such volume that nature does not have time to restore itself, and our waste consists of poison nothing around us can consume. I have often asked myself why the cycle doesn't work. I figured that if I eat an apple, the apple will grow back the next year, so the earth shouldn't be starving. But I've learned now that just like abusing human labor makes the human do worse labor, as in forcing someone to work under unsafe and miserable conditions, the work they produce will be in far worse quality. The same goes for nature, because, once again, we are not separate from nature. If I abuse a tree by taking all of its apples for myself, never allowing biodiversity to touch it, instead killing off insects and rodents by covering the tree in poison, never letting other plants nourish the earth, never letting the tree live through its natural life cycle, the tree will suffer and wither and produce worse and worse, and thereby I have disrupted its natural life cycle. I also didn't understand why we needed biodegradables. I thought that since rocks and metals don't mold or wither, they are essentially the same as plastic. However, aside from the obvious issue of the shape and color of plastic making animals consume them, poisoning themselves or trapping themselves, the issue with plastic is more so the fact it breaks the rules of nature. Plastic is oil. Oil is very old, buried remains of what was alive in the Jurassic period. Humans dug up these remains and zombified it, forcing something that was supposed to be dead to once again serve a purpose above ground. I ask similar questions about water, because water doesn't disappear, so how can we have a water shortage? Well, I've learned now that it's not a matter of consuming water. If we drank water like nature intended, we wouldn't have a problem. The issue lies with the water we don't drink, the water we shower with, do dishes with, do laundry with. We dirty up clean, drinkable water, cover it in chemicals, and flush it back into nature, because humans think they deserve all the drinking water. Not just humans, but the rich West think they deserve all the drinking water, leaving the rest of nature and the impoverished with poisoned, dirty water. There is, of course, a corporate issue, as most of our water consumption happens indirectly. Fabric production, food production, and agriculture in general are the biggest users and polluters of water. Speaking of agriculture, it makes me sad when people say we could feed all the people in the world if we did blank. It shouldn't be a surprise that the earth can sustain everyone. People don't understand that malnourishment and food scarcity is a problem created by humans. The way the planet is supposed to work is, oh, of course everyone gets fed, not just humans but all creatures, all plants and all parts of nature. And of course there are injustices in nature too, for example, disabled or injured animals that cannot hunt for themselves or protect themselves are worse off. But this is the case in the human system as well. It's not like the human system creates some sort of justice. Nothing justifies our separation from nature. Humans are war criminals against nature, and it disgusts me that we are so unaware of our own crimes. It breaks my heart that I only now understand that feeding everyone shouldn't be an act of grace, but rather the natural order of things. To understand our tendency to separate ourselves from nature, I will introduce the terms biophilia and biophobia, as coined by E.O. Wilson in 1984. Growing up, I always said every phobia has a philia, meaning that everything that acts as an anxiety trigger will also act as an arousal trigger. The only difference is the person it affects. Biophilia and phobia are different. They coexist in everyone, rather than causing some irrational anxiety or arousal. They make us respond in an evolutionarily understandable way. For example, finding peace and serenity and hearing the sounds of waves, or swatting a bug that's crawling on your arm. I think part of the reason humans and animals alike build shelters is for this very reason. We love the earth as she feeds us, but we fear the earth as she eats us. This is natural and makes sense. Just as birds and beavers build, so do we. Just as birds and beavers eat, so do we. And eventually, the birds are eaten by the worms they ate, and so are we. Only humans take it too far. Instead of building shelters, we build castles with moats and towers and armed defenses. We do not dine at Earth's table anymore. We pillage, feeding only ourselves, and we burn whatever's left of the ground we robbed, poisoned, and killed. I've been thinking too about responsibility. As you may know, I am spending my first year of my life on my own. In my own house, paying my own rent, cooking my own food. Something I thought to be impossible. As a child, I was made to believe I am incapable and moving out is a suicide. As an adult, I am far too busy paying rent to ask such existential questions. I have instead been asking myself why my way of living is so wrong. Why am I demonized for doing nothing? Sitting, eating, drinking is apparently a sin. So I try to get perspective by traveling, educating, and consuming. And somehow that's even worse. Being responsible for my own survival and every implication of Being responsible not only for my own survival, but also every implication of every action is exhausting. I wish so often that the rules did not apply to me, that I could be an exception. But in science, you cannot ask God for forgiveness. In science, you are a number just like everyone else, regardless of your circumstances. It hurts me and I hide in guilt. I ease my sorrows by going shopping or creating new things. In my irrational, existential dread, I do not see the harm in this. In my guilt and uncomfortable eco-anxiety, I try to suppress these quote-unquote bad feelings by forcing a dopamine boost, which in itself is unhealthy. But even worse, I feed into overconsumption by buying things I do not need or by creating things the world doesn't need. I am not evil for my actions. I am human. Regardless, I have a responsibility of care over myself and over my world. As I now have become situated in my apartment and educated on my own behavior, I have ways of coping with my guilt and anxiety. I can connect with nature rather than run away from it. I have the option to cry in my local park, to apologize to the squirrels and rest in the moss. I have the power to face my feelings, as I now understand uncomfortable feelings aren't bad and don't need to be fixed with dopamine. I know I am not alone in having unhealthy coping mechanisms, and I would never judge anyone for their way of surviving. I share my story not to separate us or to enforce my ways. I talk only to educate and communicate. I understand now, better than ever, why it is so difficult to do things. For the first time in my life, I feel like being perfect isn't viable. Having the smallest carbon footprint would mean consuming nothing to the point of misery. This is not sustainable. Sustainability isn't torture. It is nurturing ourselves with the utmost care and respect, just as we should with nature. Understanding that humans are nature doesn't mean understanding humans are lesser than horrible beings. It means just what it is. We are nature. I struggle a lot with accepting reality as it is. I refuse to believe that what I see in front of me is set in stone. This has often helped me implement positive changes in my own life, as well as bigger systemic changes. But sometimes the solutions aren't to push forward, to solve problems, and to change the world. Sometimes we do great things by just existing in the moment. The greatest thing a tree can do is to breathe. So why don't I hold myself to the same standard? Because I have believed for so long that humans are above nature. And even more so, I believed I am above humanity. I struggle with this to this day. Letting myself live, feel, letting myself exist is new and it's difficult. But without that piece, the picture wouldn't be complete. I am nature. As nature, I have the right to live without exploitation, and I have the right to keep myself alive and thriving. Everything around me is also nature. As nature, it has the same right to live without exploitation, and it has the right to keep itself alive and thriving. Understanding this now, I wonder, why do humans think they're above nature? Are we truly created by God and therefore born with an urge to uphold some sort of hierarchy? Is it a fault of our language or culture? At what point did civilization become separation? And why are humans the only creatures on Earth who display such behaviors? I don't know if there's an answer out there, but I would like to know. I want to understand what separates us from nature so much we think we're above it. As no other part of nature does this, something has to be different with humans. I hypothesize it has to do with our philosophical way of being. But humans are not the only free thinkers. For example, elephants are also religious, yet elephants do not think they are above. I like to compare humans to ants, explaining all of our behavior and all of our systems through their nature. But ants are not religious, nor do they think they are above nature. Are humans the way we are because we have the philosophical minds of elephants and the working minds of ants? I don't know. If I ever find the answer, you will be the first to know. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, night, or evening whenever you are watching this. Always remember that you are loved, you are worthy, and you are part of nature. Bye!